are you surviving? Can you give me the word? Do you keep on striving? Do you keep on rising? How are you surviving? Behind cinders and glass. Baby, you surviving. Honey, you surviving.
Hey everyone. Hope this podcast is finding you well. My guest today is Michael Ferrier, lead singer of Fathom Lane. They're a folk rock group out of Minneapolis, and they just released their fourth album, In the Driftless. It's a great listen. Michael and I had a great chat about his journey in music leading up to Fathom Lane, making the album, protecting yourself as a songwriter, and more. Without further ado, here's our interview. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Melodic Noise Insider Podcast, Fathom Lane's Michael Ferrier. How's it going, Michael?
It's going great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling better now. But yeah, I've really been enjoying this record, In the Driftless. And it actually reminds me a little bit of another record that was released this year. The new one by Scarlet Goodbye. In that vein as well. And could you actually just kind of start out with give us a little background on Fathom Lane and how that band began?
Well, we started playing together. I had some songs like in 2010, 2011, and I've just hadn't done any recording, hadn't really done anything in this type of music for a really long time. I was playing saxophone and electronics in an experimental jazz rock band. I have a degree in saxophone and composition, so that was like I don't want to say a detour, but that was one of the journeys that I went on for a while with a band called Electropolis. But this band, after that band kind of stopped playing. I decided that I kind of wanted to get out and play music that was a little bit more relatable for the audience, a little more accessible for the audience, and went back to writing songs and singing and doing guitar-based stuff, and kind of dusted off some older songs that I hadn't played in a while, updated them with new lyrics, bridges, different verses, things like that. And that got me down the path of, writing new material. And I went in with a friend of mine, Andrew Thomas, and we started recording some demos just really informally. I was almost like kind of trying to challenge myself, like, can I actually, do country rock, folk rock again? And so I started doing that, and he was like, man, these are great. He was so encouraging. And so we kind of ran out to the end of like what the technology he had offered to the songs. And so moved over to recording at the Pearl in Northeast Minneapolis, and just really started based around all the songs. And it was just me to start with, and I decided on bringing some people in that actually kind of became the band. And what happened was I sat down with Ashley Still because I had found her on the internet just singing into her laptop, and she sounded so incredible. And so I asked her if she would just come in and do some backups on the record. And we sat down and sang together, and it just felt so right. And we sang together in a way that I'd never sung with anyone before. Just the blend of our voices was really naturally perfect. She has a really talented ear for matching other people's phrasing and so forth. So she's a great singer in her own right, but she's especially great at kind of adapting to your voice and kind of finding a good blend, which not everybody can do. So we sat down and we sat together, and I was like, okay, now this feels like a completely different thing to me. All the songs kind of got a different focus. The material became kind of a conversation in a relationship and about relationships. Ashley and I are just friends and bandmates, but we were able to kind of bring out threads of ideas from, the relationships that I had experienced over the years. And so when she joined the band, it really kind of changed and kind of gelled everything together. That's kind of how the band started. It started as just me kind of, dinking around trying to get some stuff recorded, and it took on a life of its own from there.
And where does the band name Fathom Lane come from?
I was driving, I think it was like near Anoka, or just kind of out in that area. I was actually dropping off some furniture for somebody, and I got kind of lost, and came around the corner, and I saw this sign, a street sign that said Fathom Lane, and I was like, oh, I like that. That's cool. That sounds really cool. And so I think I wrote it down on whatever piece of paper I had in the car at the time, and kind of moved along, dropped off the furniture, and went back to revisit it. I actually worked that into a lyric on the first record on the album, Miles. It talks about someone who's standing waiting to hitchhike on Fathom Lane. As the project progressed, I didn't want to have it under my own name. I kind of took some advice from people I've talked to who said, don't necessarily try to do things that don't have your own name, because otherwise that project is attached to you forever. So it's like I wanted to do so many different things. I like so many different kinds of music and different ways of making music, so I felt like that kind of helped me, like that was going to be my Americana folk thing, and then I could go off and do something else named whatever to do another project. But so when we were recording, I just said, hey guys, I threw it out to the other folks who were recording. I just said, what do you think about this as a name for this project? And they all really loved it. So, but since that, and since you can find anything on maps on the internet, I've gone back and tried to find Fathom Lane in Minnesota, and I don't think it exists. So I might have seen something like Phantom Lane or something, and thought, oh, that's cool, but Fathom Lane's even cooler, and wrote it down. I don't know. But there's a Fathom Lane in out east. There's one in Texas. There's some around the country, but I can't find that there's one in Minnesota. So that's a little bit mysterious to me. So
I want to go back just a tiny bit to your time focusing on jazz fusion. When you started your journey or career as a musician, did you always know that you would be kind of venturing into different types of music?
I guess, yeah. I always have done different kinds of music. My focus for school and musical training and performance and stuff was saxophone. And so that kind of led but I didn't even study jazz. I studied classical and theory and composition, but that's a really insular world, the world of what they call legitimate saxophone. So, there's there's just a very small universe. So I never wanted to shut myself off from creating in different ways. And one of the things that impacted me really hugely when I first started studying in college was my saxophone teacher, Roger Martin. He said to me, well, we're going to help you be the best saxophonist you can be, but you're already well on your way to becoming an artist. And I was like, oh, well, what's the difference? And he kind of explained to me that I think in an artistic way, that I live in an artistic way, that my mentality is always figuring out how to be creative in all sorts of different ways, as just an artist, not a saxophonist, not a composer, but just all sorts of different things. And I really took that to heart. And I think it's given me permission to kind of dabble as artistically as I possibly can in all sorts of different things. I do the visual art for the band. I love making the music videos for the band, so I've always tried to just take that kind of artistic mentality into different parts of my life, different what you would call a discipline.
It's all part of that never-ending journey too. And so kind of fast forward now to this album, In the Driftless. I think I said that right.
Yep.
I was looking on. I think I was looking on either the band's page or it might have been yours too, where you actually said that like this album has actually been done for a while. Can you kind of talk about
Yeah. Yeah.
the journey to its release?
Well, yeah, it just was like it was taking a longer process to record at the very beginning. You know, it was I was recording kind of a little bit piece by piece. I had recorded a core of the record with the band in the studio, tracked live, you know, basically live, and then doing overdubs and stuff. But then there were several other songs that were more open-ended as far as how we wanted to treat them. And we wanted to start them not with like bass and drums. You know, we wanted to start them maybe with acoustic guitar and build off of that. And so they would have kind of a different sound and feel from the rest of the material. So it was taking a while, but then, you know, about 3 years into making the record or making the material that got on the record, COVID hit. And then I also, self-inflicted wounds, got a divorce, went through separation at the same time as COVID. So that definitely affected the timeline, and my energy was in a lot of, important but other places for quite some time there. And then, and also during that time, there were some new songs coming out too, out of me, like How It Begins, came later in the process of getting the songs. This is my cat.
I was just
Ruby,
saying,
by the way.
like
Yeah, and then Surviving came. That was I've written maybe just one or two songs during the COVID period, and that was the first one. And that was an experience of, trying to just catch up with that song. It came out so fast, so. And then I remember contacting our producer, Matt Patrick, and just saying, hey, I've got something new. I think it would fit on the record. Let's get it done. So that was one of the things that we kind of recorded as we were coming out of the deep isolation, when people could actually go outside their house, it felt like again. So, so it came together a little bit more slowly, a little bit more, it had a slower evolution, I'll say. But then also it was like, it felt like a time warp. I couldn't believe that much time had gone by since we first started working on this material, which I think it was in 2018 or 2019. So, there was that big, 2.5 year, 3 year chunk in the middle that I just even want to like forget about, like it didn't, like I felt like it was kind of almost a time warp. So I feel like I was actively working on this record for about 3 years, but it took 6 years to actually come out. So
yeah, and also that does for a lot of things that happened during that period of like March 2020 until just recently, it does feel like it was just all a blur. When stuff happened, but it's just kind of
Yeah.
like it's oh, you're this old, yes, because it's 2023. I'm like, oh, you're right.
Yeah,
Like it's just very
I think we all get to take 3 years off our
yeah.
resume.
Oh, that'd be great.
So, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so one thing you did, because the record itself, like it's calm, it's solemn, and there's this kind of like this towards the end, this finding of some kind of happiness, and the title itself, In the Driftless, like suggests a very kind of heaviness to it in a sense. Can you talk about the title and where and how the themes of these songs started taking shape?
Yeah, I mean, well, the title, first of all, we did a lot of work in the driftless area of southeastern Minnesota. And I always loved the term driftless. To me, it just sounded, it had a mystical sound to it. And, that's if listeners or viewers aren't familiar, it's the area, it's like a geographic region that takes up, parts of Illinois, parts of Iowa, parts of Minnesota, parts of Wisconsin. And basically it's the part of that area that didn't get covered over by the glaciers. So there's no drift on it that got dragged across the continent by the glaciers. And so it has its own topography. You know, there's a lot of bluffs. There's different flora and fauna there. There's different animals. There's different. It just has a different feel. Like if you're from the Midwest and you're used to what I'll call the drifted area, but if you're used to all those other areas, you come into the Driftless and you're like, oh wow, this is different. The rivers and streams feel different. Everything feels a little different. It's kind of this untouched area. But it also had a ring to it. We had made several videos down in that area, and my family has a farm in southeast Minnesota, so I feel like part of my roots are like firmly in the Driftless area. So it made a lot of sense to call it In the Driftless. And I also think, like you mentioned, there is like a mysterious heaviness to the title, but it doesn't really mean much if you don't know the context, but it could mean something. You know what I mean? And I try to do that with my songs in a way. You know, I try to be kind of, I don't want to say sketchy, but I try to sketch things out rather than filling in all the picture for everybody. So that's kind of where that came from, the title.
Yeah, and like because it does almost seem like if you like a term like driftless could almost, you know, be a description for a place, like if you're, you know, currently battling some kind of like mental illness too, like that period of like, hey, I'm in here, this is where I am right now type thing. And it also it starts with how it begins.
True happy ending. I know how this story begins. How it begins. What good are these lungs if they ain't breathing you tonight? Am I just gonna drown in the pool of the night?
This is, you know, it's a slower song. It's a longer song. But I think it sets the tone really well. You know, to me, as I listen, it has a very kind of like, you know, this mentality of like what's the use in a sense? Like, can you talk about, you know, opening the record with this, and I mean how the concept came about?
Well, it's a love song, but it's a love song with some pain in it, with some yearning in it. There's a distance between the two people in the song. I think the opening line is, "What good are these arms if they ain't holding you tonight?" It's like that feeling of why am I even here if you aren't, you know? So it's that feeling of wanting the completion, wanting that, you know, there's another line in there, I lay awake like the moon, you're holding half of my light. And I think so it's that kind of yearning, longing, pining for someone, the laying awake at night, kind of like looking at the shadows going across the ceiling, that kind of a vibe, and kind of knowing that other person somewhere else is probably doing the same thing. So that's kind of where that song comes from. And also someone had kind of said to me, we were talking about, I can't even remember, we were talking about relationships and so forth, and you know, happy endings and people being happy for the rest of their lives, and this person pointed out, well, even the happiest couples, you know, one of them has to say goodbye at the end, you know, unless, you know, they both die in a plane accident or something like that, you know. I mean, so even the deepest, most beautiful love stories ultimately have this tragic ending to them. And I think that really made me think, and it made me think about how I had started many, many stories in my life, but I wasn't very good at doing the ending part of it. You know, I was really good at doing the starting part, but really wondering, like, how do I make this end? How do I help this to end the best possible way? And so that is all kind of poured. Those kind of thoughts and energies were kind of poured into that song.
And then the next song on the record is "Surviving," which we talked about a little bit earlier. It's very acoustic, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it fits really well with kind of like, you know, the message and this whole. To me, I was, you know, in the video itself, like this kind of in this, maybe it's a, you know, depressive state of some kind, and you slowly find your way out. You know, one question I have is like, with the production, were you, I mean, are you trying to make it so like the sonics of a song match like what you're loosely trying to say lyrically too?
Absolutely. I mean, Matt Patrick and I, Matt Patrick, I probably have mentioned him a couple times already. He's the co-producer on the record with me. And, you know, our approach is each song needs to be its own little world, like its own separate world from all the other ones. You know, we don't want to be self-referential necessary, or we don't want to like fall back on like a crutch of, oh, no, this is the way we make a Fathom Lane song. It's like, no, what does this song say to us? What do we want this song to say? And so we really try to take each of those things and, like I said, make their own little world. And then later on, we try to figure out how it all is going to go together. But we really do take a look at, Matt's really good at understanding the lyrics, understanding the idea behind the song, and helping me find its best voice, and its best treatment, its best way for its, you know, the song to introduce itself to the listener. And so we really do try to, you know, be creative with our choices, but also all those choices need to be really serving what we think the song needs. So rather than pushing it in a certain direction, like, well, we need this to have a more pop feel, let's try to pop it up, you know. It's like we're really trying to think about the art and what the song is saying to us.
And then, so can you also talk about the treatment for the video as well? Because it's while when you listen to the song and of course the video with it, like it does kind of, you can see the message a little bit, but like it's also, you know, it is very kind of up to interpretation as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Basically, what I was really looking for was someone who had lost touch with a very important part of themselves. And so what you see in the video is the main character is just like kind of wiped out. It's COVID. She's depicted as a frontline health worker. And you get the sense that she is kind of somehow lost, and kind of you're feeling like she's kind of lost part of herself. But then you see her get up, she finally pulls herself off the couch, and we see her getting ready for what looks like to go to a ball or to go somewhere very, very fancy. She's doing all sorts of makeup, getting all, you know, putting on really beautiful clothing. And she leaves the house, she leaves the masks behind. And then the next frame, you see her kind of exploring the woods. And she comes across something in the woods that seems mysterious but beautiful, distant but coming closer, and it turns out to be that part of herself that she felt that she had lost. And she needed to go out into woods, get out of that bubble that she had kind of put herself in or found herself in, to go find that hugely important part of herself. And I think the last frame of the video is them kind of embracing her, holding hands, you know, the two parts of herself kind of coming together. And so that was the loose concept of the video. And that's the song is really about the idea of how do we collaborate to get out of this, you know, and how do we do you have any thoughts? Do you have any ideas? So it's like, how are you surviving? Can you give me the word? It's like, I've lost myself. I've forgotten how to get myself through things like this. So how are you doing it? Do you have any advice? And then the chorus talks, about, hey, you got to put your time in. And it's kind of the narrator almost saying, hang in there, we can figure this out together, and we will, figure it out and come together somehow. So that was the loose kind of idea behind the song, which actually started, for me, it started as an Instagram post, because when everyone was starting to isolate after a few months, I just made a post and I said, how are you surviving? Can you give me the word? And that ended up, a lot of people responded to it. And so then I was like, well, maybe that's kind of a cool first line for a song. And then once I started writing it, it was one of those situations where I wrote the lyrics the lyrics came to me as fast as I could write them down, which I wish that happened all the time.
Yes.
That doesn't happen all the time.
I think we all do.
But when it does happen, I love it. So.
So you also made videos for Laura Lee, Ion Way, and Queen of All Hearts.
Yeah, it's actually Iowa,
okay.
which is the way my grandma. Yeah, Iowa. Yeah. So yeah, it probably looks that way on your sheet, but it's like, that's the way my grandma always said Iowa.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
She was always Iowa.
So
yeah.
Because I also tried putting in Google. I'm just like, and the only thing I could find was that like there was a city in Louisiana that was pronounced that way. It was kind of like, where's this coming from? Nice. I don't get it. So like, what was about like these songs that inspired the music videos, the treatments?
I guess I've always thought that our music sounded kind of cinematic in a way, kind of expansive, and so if there's any music or any film directors out there who want to talk licensing, we got a whole catalog of stuff. We're ready for your next feature film, Miramax. Any of the big companies.
After the strike.
Yeah, after the strike, for sure. But yeah, I've always had thoughts that our music would lend itself to, scenes to a movie, and then that led me to working on, rather than making a music video or standing around playing our instruments, doing that kind of thing, let's try to bring out the story of the song, and let's try to make a little mini movie. And so really tried to do that with each of them. Laura Lee is a bunch of footage that I shot myself and put together myself. So that one is a little more experimental, because I'm pulling, 8mm footage and all sorts of things together to make that, to stitch that one all together. But the other ones we shot with like really high-end gear, the same kind of stuff that gets used in, the top level productions. And so we really wanted to capture the cinematic feel and put together a story that, maybe at least hinted at a larger movie or was a movie in and of itself. Like I think Iowa, especially, you watch it and it's a very suggestive, there's a narrative feel to it. It's a suggestive of things that are happening or things that could have happened in this larger story, and you feel like, oh wait, I just saw the trailer, now I want to see the whole story. So we tried to hint at the larger things, and that one is kind of a little like a fever dream at times, which I also, that was fun to try to capture. We shot that one all over southeast Minnesota. Like I think we had 6 or 7 different locations that we had to shoot in. One of the locations was my family farm down in the Driftless area. So that was fun going back there to a place I hadn't been for quite a while, but spent a lot of time there when I was a kid. It was really fun to go back there and work on and do so much of the shooting on the farm.
And also with Iowa.
South Dakota, bloody sunsets, but Iowa is
watching the video, like it does come up, like this story to me seems to be like there's this person who needs to go away to take care of some things, maybe legal or not, we're not sure. And
exactly.
and then it kind of shows her coming back too, and I also see you doing some acting as well. Can you
Yeah, a little acting in that one. Yeah.
can you talk about you know this song and how it came about, and you know is what the video depicts, is that pretty close to kind of what you're thinking when you're writing it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we made it more specific in the video. When I first started writing the songs, writing the lyrics, the first lyric that came to me was the first line of the song, which is "Your back loaded with a crooked smile," and it's like, I wanted to think about this person, this character who had been gone and come back, and they're back, sure, but they're loaded and they got a story to tell. You can tell from that crooked smile. And so that was the thing that kind of sprung that off. And it's loosely about experiences that my bandmate Ashley had been through for a couple years during the making of the record. But really, it just kind of took off from that idea. It's really the idea of the prodigal, not the prodigal son in this case, but kind of the prodigal lover going off and coming back. Wanted to commit, but had to go off and take care of some unfinished business before coming back and being able to be fully there. And like you said in the video, we're wondering, oh man, what is going on here? What did she have to go take care of, before coming back? Because you see, each of the states that are mentioned in the refrain or in the chorus, there's a different scene for each of them. So you get the sense that this was quite the, odyssey across the Midwest. You ditched the dirt of North Dakota to lose your mind in Minnesota. Indiana only let you down. South Dakota, bloody sunsets, but Iowa is where it all gets complicated. And so that I really wanted to have a different set of complications, for each of the states that are mentioned in the chorus. And so that was really fun, being able to create that world.
And then there's also Laura Lee, and actually the one thing that stood out to me the most about the song itself was it really showcases your harmonies with Ashley really well. I mean, is this song loosely based off someone, or can you talk about like how it came about?
It's definitely based on someone and experiences that I was having at the time. And it's again, I think it's a bittersweet love song. It's a song that kind of leaves some questions unanswered, some open-endedness to it. That one was one of the ones that we did without the full band approach, and I think we really, pulled in some different sounds on that with the mellotron. There's whistling in it. Which now I'm kicking myself every time I have to whistle live, because it's like I don't prepare myself. It's like, how you have to wet your whistle and stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm halfway through the song. I'm like, I have to whistle
water,
in like
please.
a minute, and I'm like, oh no. Huh?
It's like, can I please get some more water here?
Yeah, exactly. Can we get like our, ringer whistler to come up on stage, have someone sit in with us who's a really good whistler or something like that. But yeah, but that one has a little bit different approach. That one really has, I wanted it to sound like very much like someone's sitting in their bedroom and you're like sitting on the end of their bed listening to them play the song to you. So just have that intimate feel. And again, Ashley is such a sympathetic singer and she really brings that to this song. It's very, she just has a way of matching phrasing and breathing and so forth, and it really comes through in that song, I think.
Then the other one is a Queen of All Hearts.
You're the queen of all hearts, the queen of all liars, the keeper of dreams and all my desires. So break every heart, there's more lies to tell. The crown suits you well.
And this is one of those where it took me a while to try to get a hold of what it might be about, because the video itself looks like it seems to be like someone who draws people in and then uses them in a sense. And there's even the lyric, "Have you ever said a word that meant a goddamn thing?" Can you talk about the song, because I would say it's probably like maybe one of the most like mysterious songs on the record.
Thanks. I'm glad you like it. It's a song. I mean, if you strip everything away, it's a song about betrayal. It's a song about someone who was the queen of someone's world and then completely destroyed that, themselves, And so, but as it in the video, you see how the main character, the guy who's like realizing, oh, I've been had. This person is not this is not a queen. This is a devil. He ends up falling at her feet at the end. He can't escape. So there's that feeling at the end of that person who you just can't quit in some ways. On whatever level it might be. You're just kind of still paying your dues to that, and so that was the idea of that video, and like how he's desperately trying to escape, but all he does is like crawl back and like fall right at her feet again anyway. So that's that's kind of loosely the idea of that song, but it's kind of it's an angry song, but it's also kind of it's more of a seething anger. It's a quiet anger. And I think, it's kind of very, like I said, it just kind of simmers along. And once you peel away the layers of the lyrics, you're like, oh, at first it sounded like a love song, but now I'm not so sure. This might be actually a heartbreak song? Because by the end, you get the sense that, have you ever said or have you ever said a word that meant a goddamn thing? So the guy, the person who's telling the story is definitely figuring out, oh yeah, I've been had here. This is not the story that she's been telling me the whole time.
And so just another quick thing on the music videos and the writing in general. They are very, as you said, they're in a sense written purposely to be kind of open to interpretation. Is I mean, have you always written like that? Like, and it's part of that style of writing to just keep you from having to go like full confessional as a writer?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. It definitely is a protective layer, I think. But I've always been intrigued by writers like Bob Dylan, poetic lyricists who put things out there and you can interpret it any number of ways and kind of apply it to your own life. So it's like, first of all, it's a protective mechanism probably for myself. When I started playing jazz and started playing instrumental music, I had been doing like kind of confessional songs before then. I think I was kind of almost yearning for complete anonymity. I could go out there, if I'm playing a note on my horn, like through electronics and all this stuff and playing kind of free out funk jazz, no one knows one more thing about me, from listening to me the entire night. They know nothing about me. It was very anonymous. I could go out there, play and walk off. No one knew any more about me, than when they walked in. And so that felt good, because I was feeling like when you write confessional music and songs about your own life, you feel like not only are my songs being judged, but I feel like my life is being judged. You know, it's like, and so, you know, your life is out there up for scrutiny. And so I think when I came back to songwriting, I took some of the positives from that experience of having that relative anonymity and tried to bring that out in my lyrics more. And I don't think I did this consciously at all. I just think, you know, in retrospect, that's probably what I was doing. And I've always admired songwriters whose lyrics are about something, but they're also open-ended, so that you can make it about yourself, you can make it about a situation that you see out in the world, make it about, you know, so you can apply it to your life easily and freely without. And I sometimes I get kind of bored with people who are super specific. You know, I feel like, oh, well, this is a song about you, you know, and if I'm really into you, you know, then I'm into it. And if it tells me a story just about your life, well, if I'm invested enough in that life, like, you know, then I'm going to care. But otherwise, why would I care about this, you know? So I think that, you know, for me, it's more interesting when songs are really able to be interpreted any number of ways.
And I've always been curious about this part of it. When you're writing and you're obviously drawing from personal experiences, both good and bad, you know, do you have to, I would say, wait a certain amount of time before you feel safe with like pulling from certain maybe more darker experiences sometimes, like as a writer? Or do you have to sometimes wait for like that to kind of, you know, settle a little bit, or can you pull from it like right away if it comes up?
It's really a combination platter. Sometimes I do need that time to process it, and I am kind of like in retrospect, like I'll write songs about things that happened to me many years ago, because I'm, you know, now processing it or thinking about it in a different way, have a better perspective, more writerly perspective on it, rather than being so close to the emotions. But then there's other songs that just like kind of have to come out in the moment, or at least, you know, if they aren't recorded in the moment, I have at least created a song or a set of lyrics about it in the moment. But yeah, sometimes it does take some time before you really know what you have to say about a certain situation. Sometimes you have to really let it, you know, have time to speak to you, and you know, give it some time to gather up its wisdom, and like before it's going to bestow itself upon you. But then there's other songs like that are on this record that were definitely written in the moment, that they were felt, you know. Like I want to say, like How It Begins for sure was like one of those songs that really was like fully formed in that moment and about that moment, you know. And so it's about a very specific thing to me, a very specific time period in my life, but hopefully it's something that I can always continue to relate to forever, because I can either put myself back in that space, or the lyrics mean something different to me now. You know, a lot of the songs that meant something to me, a specific thing to me years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, over time, and as my life has changed, my life has kind of adapted itself into those songs, and thinking about the lyrics now in a different way, so that it keeps it fresh for me as well. So yeah, if you're a lyricist out there, be like me, write open-ended lyrics. They'll be fresh, you know, they kind of stay fresh. They stay fresh for you.
One of my favorite songs on the record, and it honestly got me right away with the intro, is The Lookout.
Hey, man, you looking at me?
I'm listening to a song and to be honest, I couldn't really tell you what it's about, but I just feel like this could be like performed like in some kind of like dark nightclub setting, but it's had a really cool feel to it, and like I mean, this seems like it must have been actually pretty fun to bring to life. I mean, how did you come with this one?
That one was like, I was trying to write something that was a little sexier, you know, and I had this kind of groove rock feel thing that I just kind of went with, you know, and I was like, it's kind of a come on song, and I don't write many of those, you know. I always think to myself, oh my god, that's going to be cheesy, you know, and it's like, but I was able to find, you know, a way to do it where it didn't feel cheesy to me, you know. It's like, oh, okay, so maybe this is how I do this, you know. It's like subdued, it's laid back, it's trying to it has kind of a seductive opening, like you said. The intro is kind of this seductive, kind of invites the listener, hey, come here, you know, like, and then I'm like, hey, my, and you know, so it's kind of laid back. It lets people kind of come into the little world. I think it's our most Tom Petty like song on the record. You know, I wanted to kind of keep it simple, and it drives, and it kind of it has a little build to it, but it kind of has this kind of sexy swagger to it, which is not something that, if I was describing my music to somebody, I wouldn't say it's sexy, swaggery music, you know. So it was really fun to do something that's more like that, and as a result, it's a lot of fun to play live too, because it stands out from the rest of the set, you know, in a really good way. And Matt Patrick, the guitarist, just rips your face off with the solo on it, you know, which is cool. So yeah, that one is a fun one. But basically it comes out of, you know, just basically someone trying to seduce another person, or, you know, ask them what they're all about in that kind of way, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Well, yeah, and also there's even that lyric that escapes me right now, but it's something along the lines of that person you are alone, I want you to be that person. It's something along that lines, and that's like a very like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's, who are you when you're alone? That's
yes,
who I want
yeah.
you to be. Yeah.
And then speaking of covers, you have two on this record. One is Sad Songs and Waltzes Revisited by Minneapolis's Mary Cuccio-Fellow. I hope I said that right.
Yeah, Cuccio-Fellow,
and then also, you know, you actually end the record with You and Me by Tom Petty, which actually is I realized that it's off the his last DJ record, and that's one of my favorite records of his.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, did you remember that
I didn't remember,
song?
no,
though?
not at all. I didn't remember this.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing about that record, is like, people remember the big, huge, high concept of it, you know, and like talking about, you know, the death of radio, and like, you know, just the rise again of payola and all that stuff, and but then there's this little love song kind of hidden at the end of the album that is so great and so beautiful, and people kind of forgot about it. So that's I like finding songs like that by big artists, that, you know, help people to discover more of their work, you know. So and do a different take on it. It's definitely, our takes on Tom Petty songs are very different from the originals, and that's by design. You know, we try to do them ours in our own way. But yeah, we have a long history with doing Tom Petty material. That song that Ashley and I sat down and first sang together, where we realized, oh, this could be really great, our voices sound really good together, was Hope You Never, which ended up being, that's a Tom Petty song from She's the One, that ended up being the first song on our first record, and I think we do a really fresh take on that. People will hear it and say, "Oh, I like your take on it better than his." So that always makes me feel good. Then we opened up Asilomar with another one of his songs from that album, which I'm obsessed with, She's the One. called what is that one called? I'm drawing a blank now. But yeah, it's like it's Hung Up and Overdue. I don't know why I couldn't think of it. It's called Hung Up and Overdue, and it's like the great line, "We're overdue for a dream come true." I just loved that line. I was like, yes, we are, you know. And so, so that one opens up one of our records, and then we covered "You and Me" for this new record, and it's the closing of the record. We adapted it. We changed it from kind of just a simple love song into a dialogue between two people who are trying to hold themselves accountable, and you know, who are kind of saying, well, I ain't perfect, but down the road it's going to be you and me.
Yeah, and it also, I think, is a nice bookend to the record too, because when you look at, it starts with how it begins and then ends with "You and Me," and even the second to last song on the record as well. I think that's "Stranger in Me," I believe. I believe that's right. It's just like what I know is about those two, about the "Stranger in Me" and then "You and Me," is that there's actually more I hear more from both you and Ashley. Not that is really cool, because it's almost like it's end of the record and you finally found this person. And so and that "You and Me" is kind of like, it's that finding of happiness and that feeling of like being content that you didn't have when you started the record. Was there ever any other song that was gonna end the record, or was that always the song?
That was always the song. It was either that song or it was going to end with "The Stranger." But we decided that "You and Me," it had to go through some processes and some work before I was like, oh yeah, okay, now I like it, you know. And part of it was changing it to a duet, and stuff like that. And yes, I feel like the record needed to end on that hope and that feeling of, let's see what happens, let's move ahead, and you know, with hope and love. And that's definitely the way that I try to live my life. And so I didn't want, you know, the entire record to be a downer, you know, even though a lot of the songs came out of a downer time and came out of maybe a downer place. You know, I know that I still have hope and I still have a lot of love, and so that's how I knew the record needed to end. And so it felt like the great closer. It also has the FM radio fade at the end, you know, like, so it like fades out real slow, and you get that sense that we're kind of heading on down the road and kind of going over the horizon. And so it was kind of the perfect closer for the record, because it gave that sense of moving ahead and moving forward, and hopefully, you know, gives you that sense of, yeah, I want to listen to that record again, because it does have that evolution.
With Sad Songs and Waltzes Revisited, when I heard the song or your version of it, I actually tried looking up for a version by Mary. The only thing I could find was an acoustic version on YouTube, because like it's one of her, it's a deep song.
Yeah.
And her version was a very kind of slow blues ballad, but like it was still great. It was powerful. I mean, that voice, wow. Like,
yeah, she's amazing.
So,
yeah.
Could you talk about, because the song itself is actually, while it's actually kind of an outlier on the record, because it does, your take on it is very kind of traditional Texas country as well. So can you talk about deciding to put this song on the record and your version of it?
Well, I was at a singer-songwriter night, and I met Mary, and she played that song, and I was just knocked out. I was like, wow, that song's about me. Thank you very much, because I write a lot of sad songs. I write a lot of waltzes. And, you know, just the idea of someone who needs to go get a pickup to pick up their pieces, you know, that was like a place I'd been a couple too many times in my life, and so I could really relate to that. So I approached her afterwards and I just said, hey, I love that song so much. How about, what would you think of us doing a cover of it? And she was like, oh, that's awesome. You know, that would be great. I love when people cover my stuff. And So then I went on my journey to find, different versions of it as well. As you, as you found out, it's out of print. I believe I ended up buying a CD with it on. And again, it's more of a rough version of it. So it's not like, I don't feel like it's like there's a version that comes out that Mary talks about on her website. But I think that record is also out of print right now. So you'd have to find it used on CD or something like that. But so I was really glad that I was able to hear the song in person and hear a little bit of the story behind it. She said she basically did write it about a bus trip that she went on and it was a short bus trip, and she said that the song is about the same length as the bus ride, but I got a good song out of it. So, but yeah, so I was really glad I got to hear it in person, and then I did find some of those YouTube versions of her playing it in different showcases and stuff. But she's an incredible songwriter, great singer, great guitar player. So I know she plays I think she's doing a regular gig right now at the White Squirrel Bar over in St. Paul. So if you have a chance to go hear her do her thing, go for it.
Yeah, and she actually back in November, my friends, the Devin Worley band, she actually played she actually opened for them, and she was really good then too. So just like I remember when I saw them, just like, oh, that's nice. Like getting her own preview, that's a really good deal. And I know I got let you go here soon, but like one thing I do want to talk about is with these albums, that they're in a sense they're intense in some parts. Can you talk about what went into the thought process behind when you were putting the songs in order in the sequence? Like how much thought went into that?
A lot. I mean, I think I came up with 5 or 6 different potential running orders. And I really feel like we hit on this one that we came upon, ended up being pretty perfect. I've always thought of the idea, Tom Petty, I think, said in an interview once that the first 3 songs on an album, you got to tell them, it needs to be its own little mini story in and of itself, because that might be all you get from a listener is those first 3 songs. Like a lot of people only have time for the first 3 songs of a record, then they got to go on to something else, so we really thought about how to craft the first 3, and then once I had that figured out, everything else kind of fell into place pretty easily. And I really wanted to lead the listener through, and so that they got a variety. Like every time a song started, I didn't want them to think, oh, well, this is the same as the last song. So every song definitely has a different feel following in and of, on itself. I didn't want the 2 country-ish ballads right by each other, so they naturally found themselves about 5 songs apart from each other, so that was perfect, because it was about the time that you were ready to glom onto something like that when it came along, so definitely think about the album itself as an art form. Like like I said, all the little songs are their own little world, but then once they're done, it's like how do I build this other kind of larger meta world, that is all the songs, and so definitely came up with about 5 or 6 different running orders, but once I came up with this last one, the one that was the order on the record, sent it off to Matt, the co-producer, and a lot of times he'll have, oh, we should do this, or think about this, or why did you put this here? But, 45 minutes later after I sent it to him, he was like, that's perfect. And I was like, oh, okay, good. That was done. Easy. So, yeah, done. If he thinks it's perfect, he's not going to say that unless he really, really feels that way. So yeah, really a lot of thought was put into it, making sure that story, as you picked up on, the story that feels disconnected at the beginning, like there's a disconnection that by the end of the album that connection has been made, and you're kind of sent off into the world with some feelings of hope. So
And then just, before we go, what do you want fans to take away from the album?
I hope that they take away from it an album that they can listen to a lot and like take different things out of it at different times. Like I hope that they are able to relate to it. I think we all, have different experiences and relationships, and this band is really about exploring relationships and the idea of relationships and how they work, how they break down, how they don't work. And I think, so I just hope that even though these are songs that came out of experiences that I have, I hope that they have a song or an album that they can take with them. I hope that they have a good road trip album. I think it's a lot of fun to listen to an album like this from start to finish. So you do get that sense of the narrative that's happening through the song choices and through the lyrics. So I hope they have one of those. I hope they have a road trip album, because that's, to me, that's kind of almost the highest pedestal you can put on an album, is like, if I got to drive to Green Bay or something, is this going to be one of my go-tos, like to listen to start to finish? So.
Well, it's definitely been getting a lot of play in my car. So it's
awesome.
It's a great album. It's out everywhere now. Where can people follow you on social media?
Well, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. I did start a new Threads account. We're on Twitter. The best way to buy our stuff, if you want physical copies, and I encourage you to do that, would be through Bandcamp. We've got CDs. We've got cassettes this time for the very first time. This one is out on vinyl. So yeah, the vinyl's the way to go in my world. But yeah, you can find that on Bandcamp. We're on all the streaming platforms. If you would follow us on Spotify, that'd be amazing. We'd love that. But you can find us on Apple Music, Deezer. You can find us just everywhere.
Well, the album is called In the Driftless. It's a great record. It's out everywhere now. Michael, this has been awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Okay.
I'll just do the logo.
And that's it for this episode. I want to send a big thank you to Michael Ferrier for his time and insight. Fathom Land's new record, In the Driftless, is out now. I also want to thank our producer, Paul Thorson, editor-in-chief, Andrew Prizzo. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, @PlaylistTC, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. Just type in Melodic Noise Media, you should find us. You can also join our Patreon and help keep the ship afloat. We'll be adding some new content very shortly. You can also find me mainly on Instagram at AndySmileyJ. Thank you for listening, and until next time, I'm Andy Ellis. Remember to stay safe and support local music. Take care, everyone.
I guess I'm through dreaming about gone. The rock spread